And welcome to this live watercolour workshop here in Nottinghamshire from the SAA headquarters. Quite excited to bring you this workshop today. We're going to paint in this wonderful Mediterranean seascape. I think it's a nice one for the summer, nice and colourful, nice terracotta sea. And this is going to be done in two parts. We're going to work from now till about 12:30, take a break, and then we're back at 2 p.m. Is that correct? 2 p.m. So it's quite exciting, folks. So feel free to paint along. If you're watching this thing at home, please do fire some questions at us. It's always good fun, okay? So the first thing to say, it's all sketched in. We've used some masking tape. We've stuck this on all four sides to a board. This could be anything from a piece of cardboard to a piece of wood. And the first thing, folks, here in the workshop area is to use some masking fluid. So I'm using the SAA masking brushes. Best bit of advice is to use the largest one. If you give it a bit of a clean, give it a nice clean, and I've got some masking fluid. If you've never used this before, this is liquid latex basically, and it smells quite interesting as well. It smells a bit like cat wee, I think. It's like an ammonia kind of smell. So if anybody faints during a workshop, it's good for that as well. Nice clean brush, and basically what I tend to say is don't put too much of this stuff on, because the problem with masking fluid is you can quite easily put it on too thick, and then there's a chance of it ripping your paper when it comes off. So a good bit of advice is to get your fluid and just wipe the excess off on the side of the rim of the lid there. And then we'll go for it. The plan of action is to mask off the inside, not the outside, of this tall tower. Now, we're going to mask off the entire top section, not the roof, just the top section, like a bit of a angled area. I don't know whether you can see that on the screen there. So that entire top section, but not the roof. You can forget the roof because that's darker, you see. That's darker than the sky, so that can be sorted later. Then we come down the main tower. Now, we don't need to do the entire tower. We do need to mask off the ledge, though. So you've got the ledge here that fires either side. Make sure you get the width. When you come down this tall tower, what I'd recommend you do is you just do probably about a quarter of the width of it. Don't put it on too thick. Again, wipe the excess off on the side of your bottle every time you apply this. And the best bit of advice with masking fluid, folks, is once you've gone so far to clean your brush, pick off the excess and start again. So if you look down this left-hand side, hopefully you can see I've pretty much gone all the way down. I want to take this a bit further than what it is on the actual picture. I want to take it down to the tree line. So if you can see this, you can see I've just gone down to where the trees are, basically a straight line that goes all the way down that side there. Then, this is the thing to get right, folks. Clean your brush really well. Pick out the excess, just like that, sort of rub it through your hands, and then start again. If you don't clean your brush every couple of minutes, the fluid will stick to the brush and it won't come off, okay? So it makes sense to do that. It really does. Okay? And the same thing is going to apply to this side as well. I'll come and check the folks in the studio. Make sure we're all okay with this. It's a bit different on this side because you can see I've come down there, come down here, and I'm stopping where that roof, that little extension, sticks out on the side. I wonder if we've got planning permission for that. We need to put that in and come down there. So basically it goes down on the right-hand side, out in this roof and down over into this extension. This is just as important as painting, folks. You get this right, it makes life so much easier. Let's see how we're doing. I often wonder how people manage without masking fluid, you know? It's got so many uses in the art world. So just make sure that you do a nice broad line. If we're talking measurements-wise, it's probably about 1/4 inch wide either side of that tall building. That'll keep it nice and clean for you, yeah? A thin line's not going to pull it off on this one, so a nice broad line is a good thing to do, all right? Nice wide line. So we do the extension as well on the right-hand side. And then we get into that large horizontal building. We'll call it the bungalow, shall we? We'll go into the bungalow there. and it comes down here on this side. Now, the difference here is I'm also doing the roof as well, folks. Can we see that? The same width of line for the roof, and it also comes down the edge here all the way to the trees. A nice wide line, 1/4 inch, centimetre wide, something like that, yeah? That's a good way of saying it, I think. So it's completely protecting all the sky area and all the water area from that building, or vice versa. Just that little bit there as well, look for me, just down there. Just make that a bit wider there. Just as important as anything, this, get the masking right, you've cracked it, all right? Super. That's good. No, it's fine. It's better. You can always take it off. That's the thing about this stuff. And there's just one more thing we need to do, folks, and that is the fence, the balustrades, just at the bottom. I'd probably recommend changing brushes. If you've got the option at home, folks, to change brushes, go for the medium size brush as opposed to the large one. I want to swap over brushes there. Nice and clean. And I'm basically going to use the slightly smaller brush because it's a bit more fiddly on that one. And just doing the balustrades as well, and those stone balls on the top. Like a scene from Mamma Mia, this. We're going to paint Pierce Brosnan and Meryl Streep singing that song about divorce. What's it called? Winner Takes It All. There you go. You know what I mean, don't you? Nice and jolly thought in the morning while you're doing a painting workshop. So you can see there we've put the balustrade on, folks, and it's all masked off there, nice and clean. If you want to live life dangerously, you could actually put a little spot on the top of that wall. It could be a bird sat there. Just a little dot there. A bearded chuff, that. Just a little spot on the top of the wall. But seriously, folks, smaller brush keeps it nice and clean, nice and tidy, all right? This makes life so much easier for you, okay? Now, masking fluid can be left on a picture. I'll do a little bit there as well, this building. Masking fluid can be left on for a good 3 or 4 hours, no problem. I wouldn't leave it on overnight because it does eventually turn to goo when you can't get it off, all right?
Why do I always get
bitty bits? That is probably because maybe you've not got quite enough fluid on your brush and you're dragging it.
Right.
But as long as it's on there, it's protected.
Okay.
I'd make your lines a bit wider on the inside.
Okay.
And then obviously down there as well.
Right.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, if it goes bitty, it means that you're probably a little bit too dry at putting it on, okay? So it takes a bit of getting used to, really.
These bits as well?
Yeah, and here as well, that little bit wants doing there, that little corner there on yours, yeah? And if you bring that all the way down to the bottom of the trees as well, just continue it down. Can't go wrong, folks. I think that's a little bit of balustrade there. That's the bit that got away into there. Just bring that down to the bottom as well for me there, won't you? Can't go wrong with this, folks. Best ones I've seen all day, these. Just bring that all the way down to the bottom there, look. Take that all the way to the bottom there for me. Makes it a bit easier, that's all. We'll talk about colours and brushes as we get to the painting, all right? But at this stage, it's just the fluid. Are you all right there? Good. Marvellous. Just that little bit down there to do now. Nice wide line, folks, because it protects everything. That's it. I think we've pretty much cracked it. Ready for action. So, clean those brushes off. Give them a little bit of a pick any little bits off the end that you've got there. Leave them to dry while I'm painting the sky for you. Now, I'll be honest with you, folks, it won't be long before yours is dry. So you ain't going to worry about this. It's fine. So we'll pop the lid back on the masking fluid because you're not a real artist until you've had a masking fluid spillage, okay? And but it's not good on a carpet. It involves insurance if it goes on the carpet. You're speaking from someone that's done it several times, okay? we have a fairly large brush. We've got a size 10 brush, actually, and it's a gold brush, which means it's for the over 60s. Is anybody over 60? 3 people, 4 people over 60. Well, I'm 40 this year, so I've got to bring my fake ID to use this brush. The SAA gold brushes are really, really nice brushes, folks. Really are nice brushes. It's basically, it's a sable mixture, a synthetic sable mixture. And I promise you, I use these brushes all the time. All the pictures you've seen around the room today, and I'll put a big pile at the back later so you can have a rummage through, are all these brushes. Good stuff, okay? Now, the chances of your masking being dry is probably quite slim. Just leave it for a few minutes while I do the sky. I'm just going to give it a quick blast with a dryer. We've not got 16 dryers in the room, because otherwise it probably trip the electric, and it's not good for a live broadcast. But I'm just going to give it a quick dry. Doesn't take long. And then ready to start painting. So just to go through the colours in your palette, hopefully they're all squirted in the same place. These are all Matthew Palmer colours, okay? There's 12 colours in the natural range. This one's getting a bit excited. Look, can you see there? It is. It's happy to be here. Let's put it that way. Natural colours. We've got, keep it clean. We've got 12 of these. First of all, the first colour you've got there, folks, is called natural turquoise. Perfect seascape colour. If you look around the room, you can see the picture we're doing today. At the back of the room, there's 4 seascapes on that back window. You can have a look later on. All using natural turquoise. It's designed for seascapes. It's not a normal turquoise. It's a pre-mix designed by me, manufactured by the SAA. So natural turquoise, that's your first one. Natural orange, we've got there. We've got natural grey here. 2 greens, natural green light and the normal natural green. And right at the end, you've got natural blue, okay? So that's the colours we're going to use. Later on, we shall be bringing in some white as well. But I'll give you that as we get to that stage, natural white. All natural colours, folks, all very different. There's no ultramarine blues here, there's no yellow ochres here. These are all very much my own palette of colours, okay? So while yours dries off, I'm going to do a very quick sky, and that way, if you need any help, I can walk around and help you, okay? So the fact your water's gone cloudy doesn't matter. I won't change this water all day, I promise you. This water will stay like that through the whole day, okay? One thing I won't do is drink it, yeah? But you don't need to change your water every 10 minutes. Honestly, it's one of those famous myths that you don't need to do, really. So I want to do the sky and a little bit of the water using the size 10. Now, my masking fluid is dry. Yours will be a bit damp, I guess. I'll just leave it a few minutes. And basically, I'm wetting the entire paper once your fluid is dry. Again, I'll just wait until I've done this. I'll do it very quickly, so there'll be no faffing with this one, folks, and then I can help for those who are beginners, all right? Bags of water. Look down the edge, make sure you've not missed any bits. It's always good to wobble your board a little bit. And make sure it's pretty much all covered. Size 10 is a good brush for this. It doesn't over-soak it. That's important. But because I'm working on an easel, it's better if you can to go back to the top again because it runs down the paper. So it's better to make sure the top's nice and covered. So that's pretty all well covered. Nice and simple. So I've done the water as well because we're going to put a reflection of the sky in the water. Now I've not mixed any colours ready, look. The colours are still here and you'll see why. Because I'm using natural paints, Matthew Palmer natural paints, pre-mixed watercolour, folks. You don't need to worry about mixing colours as much. We do mix, but not as much, okay? So that is all pretty much all set. It's all covered, nice and ready, there to go. The water's here, so it doesn't need it in the palette so much. So I tend to clean my brush, wipe off the excess, give it a shake. The men do that better than the women. Shake the drips off, okay? A little tiny, keep it clean, just live. A tiny, tiny, tiny bit of, don't say that out loud, by the way. A tiny bit of natural orange goes a mile. Little speck mixing with the water. Look how light it is. That's the second colour, folks, natural orange. Second one in your palette, that is. Just simply goes across the horizon, okay? It's straight across and work it up. If it happens to go over your building, just get a bit of tissue and take it off, yeah? Keep that in the hand ready, just in case. Work it across in horizontal brush strokes. Try and avoid your building too much if you can. It doesn't matter if it goes over a little bit. And also bring some orange into the water as well. Keep the lines horizontal. Don't put too much orange in the water, but a little bit, okay? Take it up in horizontal brush strokes. It's not a strong orange, and you can see that from the picture. It's just there in the background. Clean the brush, wipe off the excess, shake the drips off, and then do the same with the blue. Now the blue is at the far end of your palette if you're working in the studio. Natural blue, straight across the top. Natural blue is a clean blue made from various blue pigments. It's also a non-granulating blue, as in it's a very fine ground pigment in this one. It's a clean blue. You can see how clean that is. It's designed to be a sky blue, simple. So it's very different to ultramarine. It doesn't granulate like ultramarine does. It's a lot brighter than cobalt as well. And it mixes a lovely green when you bring it with a yellow. This goes straight in and mixes with the so big horizontal brush strokes. A few white bits is not a bad idea. For those people that are in the studio, if you can see this rather than that, this is more accurate, yeah? I'm also going to bring a little bit of blue in the water in the form of a few horizontal lines. Does that make sense? Just a few horizontal lines. There we go. So very simple so far, making sure to wipe off any paint that goes over your building, okay? Then all we need to do to finish off is to put a couple of little clouds. If you look at your copy that you've got in front of you, you can see a few grey horizontal clouds. Now, this is using natural grey, which is the third colour in the palette here in the studio. Clean brush, shake the drips off, blah, blah, blah. And then take the grey, little tiny bit of grey. Just look at that palette, folks. The paint's not really coming out of it if I do that. People tend to put too much water in here. The water's on your paper today, so just think about that. Natural grey. Take the grey, medium sort of strength grey. Now, if you're thinking, what is natural grey? Is it Payne's grey? It's a very different colour. It's basically a colour that's mixed from red, yellow and blue pigment. Red, yellow and blue. So there's no grey in this. It's a very useful colour. You'll use it a lot today. Same brush, size 10. So before we put anything on the paper though, I just want to tap off the excess on some tissue so it's almost dry. So it's an almost dry brush. If you're not sure if it's dry enough, just test it on your neighbour's picture first and it'll be fine. Very simply, just put little twists. Imagine, okay, as you do this, the brush is a steam train that is chugging along, leaving a trail of smoke behind, steam or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, does that make sense? And it gives you little horizontal clouds. Now I could do a few of these twists, not over the building. Nice dry brush, remember. The drier the brush, the more in control. And you can twist these along. It's like a little rotation almost. I can put one, say, here. The paper's still wet. It's still workable, which is great. It's just what we want it to be. Low down over the orange area. And then once I'm at a stage where I'm happy with that, the last thing to do, which is the best part of this, is to simply clean my brush really, really well. Good clean, nice and clean. Good old squeeze through the fingers, so the brush goes kind of like flat. And then all you do is just ever so gently soften and drag. Does that make sense what I'm doing there? A very almost like a damp brush, dragging away the colour so it kind of disappears and becomes part of the picture. This is the bottom of the clouds. Does that make sense? So let me talk you through this process then, folks. The first thing is to wet it. Yours will be dry, I guess. I'll come and check. Wet the whole picture, size 10. Wet it again at the top. Start off with the orange, natural orange across the bottom of the sky and just randomly in a few places in your water. If you can see this rather than the actual screen, folks, you'll see much better clarity of colours today. Clean the brush, go for the blue, fading into the orange. Put a little bit of blue in the water and then natural grey for the clouds. And good luck to you. I'm off for a cup of tea now, so I'll be back shortly. Size 10, which is this one. There you go. Size 10 brush, folks. Make sure you clean it, because maybe the last people that used it didn't clean it so well. You never know. And nice and clean. Was yours a dirty brush, was it? Dirty brush. It's this one that you want, the size 10 there, so give it a clean. That'll all come out and wash that. We can always put a cloud there if we need to. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. Yeah, but make sure you wet it first. Bags of water, yeah? Always wet your sky first, wet into wet. Again, on the screen, folks, you're not seeing the orange like you are here on the... so if you can try and focus on the board, that'll help you. And I'm going to float around if anyone's got any problems. Yes.
Wetting the sky.
And the water as well.
And the water.
The whole thing, yeah. The whole thing. Wet it all. Have a bit of kitchen paper in your hand just in case you feel that the paint happens to go over the top of the tower for any reason. Okay. Bags of water. Keep getting plenty of water on there, folks, yeah? Don't be afraid to use a decent bit of water, will you? Wet it and wet it again. Ah, right, so that's turquoise, so clean your brush. The first colour was the orange, remember? So a nice clean brush. Give it a good clean. Get all that turquoise out of it. A little bit goes a long way, folks. Lift and mix in a separate area. There you go, there's the orange. We're going to wet it first, though. It's a bit dry, that. It's a bit dry, that, now. You want loads and loads of water you want on there. Bags of water, look. Don't be afraid of the water, folks, okay? First colour is the orange, which is the second colour in your palette, the rusty one. Again, have a bit of kitchen paper ready just in case you start crying, or just in case you start getting any bits of colour over the top of your tower. You can just dab it off, yeah? Okay? Bags of water, yeah, that's ready. So, orange. Little bit goes a long way, remember? There you go. That's it. Highly concentrated, folks. Good quality gum Arabic-based colours. That's, yeah, maybe a little bit more for good luck, but that's
A bit better.
That's fine. That's okay. It's only a very gentle orange, you know. Less is more, really. Just across that horizon line for the orange there, really, you know. And then a little bit in your water. Very quickly clean your brushes, and then go for the blue. The blue is the one right at the end of your palette. Natural blue. Yeah, it's gone a bit dry there, hasn't it? Shall we give it a bit of a scrub? How's that? Bit in the water as well for you there, look. Can't go wrong with this, can you? That's it. So you're ready for your blue now, which is this one. The blue one's at the end. That's fine. Just a few little bits in your water as well. Nice. So a few bits of orange in your water as well. Orange water's healthy, apparently. Put a few bits in your water. Not too orange, though. Blue water's not healthy. The blue goes from the top down. Bring it down, okay? Keep that brush moving until it disappears into the orange, okay? It's the one right at the end, this one, yeah. On the right-hand side of your palette. Natural blue, folks, good colour. If you're going to treat yourself to any natural colours today, you want to be getting some blue and some grey. They're the two staples, really. Nice, clean summer blue, folks. You'll not get a cleaner blue that also mixes nice greens than this. Nice. And then you're ready for your... should we just soften that in a bit? Yep. It's got a bit wet, hasn't it, there? You're ready for your grey now, aren't you, on yours? So that's it. It's good. I'd leave it. That works. I don't mind a bit of this, but if that ever concerns you, just change your board to that. And that'll lose the... Yeah. Don't worry about it. Good. So it's the grey. Now, before you apply the grey, folks, the secret, like I say, is to dab off the excess on the tissue. Natural grey. Okay? Bit dry, I think.
Too dry.
Should we wet it again? It's a speed thing, you know. When you paint the sky, you're normally saying 5 minutes tops, you know, and then you need to be a little bit speedy. But you can always re-wet it again without any trouble. I'll put a bit more orange there. Do you mind me doing this?
No, not sure.
Good. So, are you ready for the blue? Top down. This is the blue at the end. Yours is a bit dry into there as well. And don't forget to put a bit of orange in the water as well for me, okay? And then you're ready for your grey, folks. You could be a bit stronger with your blue, I think. First at the top, you know, look at that there. Do you know what I mean? Fade it down. Let's just work it in. Rather than dab it off, just work it in. Perfect. Grey time, yeah? So you're ready for your grey next. And don't forget to soften your bottoms, will you? So before you do that, just give it a bit of an extra dab on there for me, on the tissue, yeah? So it's natural grey, folks. Remember that it's almost a dry brush, which is very simply taking the excess off the brush on tissue, yeah? The grey would be the third colour along from the left side, okay? And how did we soften the bottoms in? What we did is we cleaned the brush like this, cleaned it, squeezed it, like so. And then very, very, very gently just kind of wipe the base of them. The best skies are the ones you don't go back into once you've done it, okay? So, if you're a beginner, you probably won't like what you've got. No one likes what they've done. It's just normal. If you like it, there's something wrong, to be honest. So the best bit of advice is not to go back in once you've done it. Because once it's dry, that's a little bit low down, that one. Let's put a bit there as well. So I want to take some of that colour and put some there. It's more sort of around here that you want them. Like a nice... I'd leave it, it's fine, yeah. It'll be a distant storm cloud coming over the horizon. Sometimes things work out like happy accidents, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the chap that pushed his wife off the cliff. I shouldn't say that, should I? I think I'm outnumbered today. So if you clean your brush, sorry? And also live. Apologies for that one. So if you clean your brush and squeeze it through the fingers there, and then just soften the bottom of those clouds away. Can't go wrong. Yeah, you could give it an extra dab on there. Try again. No, I mean, that's working nice what you're doing there anyway. These are nice. I'll just take it off the edge there. Just give it... You chickened out there, didn't you? There you go, that's good. Nice simple sky, folks, and for those people that can see the pictures on the right-hand side of the studio, you'll see similar clouds have been applied to other pictures, yeah? Okay? Which is quite good fun. Right, well, that is basically the starting point of this. Nice and simple. The best thing to do is not to touch anything. If your neighbour touches the sky now, the reason these SAA brushes have a little red bit on the end, this piece here, because that's the bit that you slot between someone's ribs if they touch the picture, okay? Don't try this at home, will you? Okay? It's always entertaining to watch people, and I do big workshops with 40, 50 people all over the place, you know, and you often see people, normally sat on the back because they're out of way, they'll say, well, the chap next to me has got a bit more blue in the sky than me, or a bit more orange. So while Matthew's not watching, get a bit more orange and just put a bit more just there. And then this big hole appears called the cauliflower. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah? Have you come across them before? Anyone never seen a cauliflower? You've got some. There's some over there, okay? And the thing is, I'm sure that people know that they shouldn't do it, but they do it anyway. And it's one of those things that without realising, they'll pick a bit of paint up like this and they'll go from the palette to the picture, and it feels like a lifetime from there to there, like this. And I'll touch it, and then this big white thing appears, and the whole world goes in slow motion. It's like, no, help. And the only way I can describe the feeling, it's the same sensation when your biscuit falls in your tea. Everything just goes into panic mode, you know. So you're best off letting your sky dry. You can always come back to it and add more later, especially on a good cotton paper like this. So if you got to the end of the day, or you got back home and you thought, well, you know something, I fancy putting another cloud here, you could dampen it with clean water and put some more grey in, but only on a cotton-based paper. Don't do it on anything like Bockingford or things like that, because it'll wash off the background, where this paper will stay put. That's the difference here, folks. This is good quality paper. You might notice your paper's gone a bit of a swell, yeah? That's fine, it's normal. But it will flatten when it dries. It will always go nice and flat once it's dry, yeah? What we're going to do now, folks, is I'm going to paint in the water while yours has a few minutes to dry. And then that will give us a good starting point on this, yeah? I think yours is a bit dry there, isn't it? So what I want to do is I'm just going to dampen down the sky area, just there. So you can put your clouds in. It's a bit dry, yeah? The sky works without the clouds, but it's obviously nice to put them in. So if you take the grey. It's also quite warm in here, so it's drying fairly quickly. So that should give you the chance to cover up the cauliflowers. The best way of dealing with the cauliflower is to cover them up. How's that? Less is more, yeah? Okay? No, this is what you call bleeding paint, this. A cauliflower is a white shape. So all of you should have a little bit of a kind of speckled edge to the tops of the clouds. You know, where it's ran up a little bit? That's great. This is what I want to see in these clouds, and all the ones you see around the room will have the same. That looks more natural to me. The same way that you drop maybe a bit of ink onto like a damp piece of paper, that kind of thing. It's basically bleeding paint, you know, which is quite a comical thing to say, but because it's got other meanings, of course, bleeding paint. But cauliflowers looks like that, but it's white. It's like a white hole, you know? Yeah. So bleeding paint's great. You know, it's good. Cauliflowers are a technique. You can use them for things, like for putting clouds over the top of a mountain, for example. How are we doing? Let's have a look for you. It's getting a bit dry, isn't it, now? Let's give it a bit of a soften. Is that all right? And I would say that you've got enough clouds there, because your paper is just about at that stage where it's dry. How's that? Nice. Leave it to that. Less is more, folks. Don't fiddle, because you will go blind. Okay? Yeah, it's quite nice to see that, though. I mean, that's quite a natural thing to see. When you're working on a textured surface, it's quite hard to get smooth skies like this over there. The way to get a really smooth sky is to make sure that you've got more water here, because it runs. Does that make sense? Or even use a big flat brush. Some people use big brushes like a one coat wall brush. But if you've got a few lines here, like this one, it's fine. I mean, most skies you'll see a few brush marks. It's part of watercolour, really. The smoother skies that you'll see are painted with a wet, more water. Okay, all right. But you always realise after you've done your first one how you would change things, you know, and that's what it's all about doing a workshop. So leaving yours to dry, folks. Mine's dry enough to move on, but yours probably won't be. So I'll just kind of hold back and put your brush down. If anyone's still painting, then there's something worrying me, okay? These chairs are all rigged up to a little button, 1 to 16. Get a little electric shock if you're still painting at this point, okay? 10-second countdown. You think we're joking? This is Nottinghamshire. Right, standard practice. Okay, so I want to do the water. I want to do the sea. Much more vibrant colours coming in this time. We're going to be using blue. We're going to be using turquoise, plenty of water in your palette this time because the paper wants to be dry for this. Nice and dry. So let me show you the water. Again, I'd let yours dry, folks. This is the last big wash. We've got to think about a little piece on this side of the tower, not going over the tower itself, of course. So 2 colours, folks, but this time adding water to the palette, okay? So I'm putting a few blobs of water there. Natural blue, so you can see it's a much more juicy colour, as in it's quite watery. Clean brush. And then here, I'm going to take some of this colour, which is natural turquoise, designed for seascapes, folks. Very strong colour, a little bit goes a long way. You won't get a turquoise as clean as this one. This is the perfect kind of Mediterranean sea colour. There's the turquoise. You'll also find that because we've got plastic palettes in the new palettes, that it bobbles like that. Can you see that? But the colour is there, but it just kind of groups up, okay? So, clean brush. So I've got 2 colours ready mixed. My first one is the blue, not a thick one. Paper's dry, okay? I'll put a thin line of blue just at the back of the tower, right up to the masking fluid, sticking to a straight line. Just leave yours to dry, folks, a little bit. Move over here. Take that all the way across the base of those cliffs. Working fairly quickly, come all the way down the side of the masking fluid. All the way down the buildings, all the way over those balustrades at the bottom. Does that make sense there? Looks more grey here, but it's obviously blue on the screen, on the painting itself. And then just do a few random horizontal lines of blue. Working fairly quickly, folks, because drying's not a good thing here. So put a few horizontal lines of blue. It looks very patchy and very, well, a bit naive really, I suppose. Clean brush. Then we'll go for the turquoise, natural turquoise. Again, it's here. There's the turquoise. In between those lines, use this nice pale turquoise in the gaps. Can you see that going on? Work it in the gaps, right down to the bottom. Work it in between the lines and over here as well. So it all looks very rough at this stage, but the bit that brings it all together is when you clean your brush, use a bit of kitchen roll. I found this hanging from a tree in the car park. Just give it a simple tap, so you're taking the excess water off, and just ever so relaxed, just blend it all together. Go over the top of it all, the water that is, so it all softens in. Does that make sense? So it naturally leaves, if you can see this, you'll see it better. Naturally leaves 1 or 2 horizontal lines where the blue and the turquoise are. And it's a good background colour for this picture. And don't forget the piece at the side as well. Look. So I started off with a fairly dry piece of paper. It's not going to be perfectly dry, but dry enough. And I put a pale blue, which went across here, all the way across there, all the way across, and all the way down the side of the building. Make sure it covers all the masking fluid, nice and flush over the balustrades. A few horizontal random lines scattered around, and then turquoise goes in between. Clean brush, a couple of taps on tissue, and then just hover and soften. And good luck to you. Can't go wrong with that. If anybody's sky and water is saturated, folks, let me know and I'll give it a quick dry for you, okay? But I suspect that you should be all right? So if anybody's is really, really saturated,
How about some of the orange in the water?
that's fine. That orange wants to be there. Yeah, so you've all got orange and blue in your water already. That needs to be there to, balance it together. Not too strong with your colour, folks. Keep that blue fairly pale. So it's the blue and the turquoise. That's great, yeah. And not too thick, okay? The turquoise is the one on the left of your palette, the blue is the one on the right of your palette. Can't go wrong. So fairly quickly, folks, this is the last time you want to be pretty speedy with your brush strokes. Nice big brush for this one. Size 10 brush is good for this. Straight across that horizon, fairly straightish, not got to be precise or anything like that. And working on dry paper. You've not wet the water first. A little bit lighter if that's okay. Just put a bit more water there for me if you could. Make sure you cover the balustrades, folks, where the fluid is, because that blue is going to make the white stand out like a bit of a negative painting style. Again, fairly speedy with this, working fairly sharpish. So you could go a little bit lighter, I think, with that blue. Just a bit more water here. And again, there you go. That's fine. And then all the way down the side of those buildings, yeah? Right over the top of the balustrades. Make sure you cover them so you get that nice bit of contrast. Clean your brush, go for the turquoise. The turquoise goes in between. Okay? So you're ready for some turquoise now? Yeah, you can paint over your tree, that's fine. Tree's no problem. Once you put that turquoise on, clean your brush, give it a bit of a tap on tissue, and then scrub it all together. Scrub the blue so it blends into the turquoise. And the thing is that you're going to get a few hard lines. That's perfectly fine and not anything to worry about. That is normal. That is perfectly normal, okay? Let that just do its own thing, okay? Nice clean brush. Keep cleaning your brush, folks. Just a single tap on water and then a nice soften so it all just blends in. So keep refreshing that brush, folks. Keep getting a bit of water on your brush, get it all blending in, get it all scrubbing together. So even now on this picture, I can go into the water, tap on tissue and just give it a bit of a blend. That's what it's all about, folks, getting your colours all working together, okay? Does that make sense, yeah? So if you've got any hard lines, get the water and get it all nicely softening in. Use your whole brush, keep it moving. A few lines don't matter. As long as they're horizontal, it's fine. Okay? The main thing is that you've all got nice, vibrant turquoise seas. Nobody's got Blackpool, you know. We've got nothing wrong with Blackpool, people watching at home. Just not turquoise sea, is it? And make sure it's all nicely covered. Good stuff. Now a bit later, we're going to be adding white to the water. And for this, we're going to be using some white paint and we're going to be using the plastic cards that you've got on your desks, which in this particular case, of course, are SAA membership cards. You can use these to put in the water on, but we'll get to that later, okay? So for the people watching at home or painting along, then get yourself some white. This could be gouache, or some people call it goulash, or it could be, yeah, I know, Chinese white. It's probably not the right colour to use for this because Chinese white just disappears, but white watercolour or gouache or gouache, whatever you want to call it, goulash, up to you. Later, we'll get to that stage, okay? All right. Now, we're going to change brushes, folks, and go for a size 6 brush. Size 6 brush. If you're not sure which one the size 6 brush is, it's the one that's got a big 6 on it. Although, someone did say to me a few weeks ago, they said, I've got a size 9 brush, not a 6. Seriously, no joke. genuine. That's the sort of thing you have to deal with when you teach, you see. It's good fun, I like it. Size 6 brush. SAA size 6 brush. This brush is the one I use more than any, okay? A size 6 brush to me is the workhorse. It's what does all the fiddly bits in the picture. So it'll do everything from the roof to the cliffs and all things like that. While your water's drying, if that's possible, we're going to add a bit of movement in your water, which is healthy, yeah? And we're going to use some grey for this, pale grey. Lots and lots of horizontal lines make water successful, okay? So a nice clean brush, number 6 brush, and wipe the excess and give it a bit of a shake. That's the grey that I was using for the clouds. I'm going to take some of that, not too thick, folks, and again, something to potentially practice on your neighbour's picture first. What I'd suggest you do here is just tap off the excess grey again. Try and hold your brush like chopsticks, sort of like that, between the Winston Churchill fingers, and grab it with the thumb. So it's like that. Does that make sense? So it gives you a chance to hover and every so often touch your paper. Try not to go over that building, okay? Now, if this is something that you're struggling with, sometimes, daft as it seems, it helps to stand up to do that. That's because you're working more like this kind of thing, all right? So that's something to think about, okay? But it's basically, it's a pale grey, tapping the excess off on the side on some tissue and doing lots of horizontal ripples in your water. Now keep these horizontal. You can see them here starting to come through. Keep them horizontal, folks. Try and avoid windscreen wipers and diagonals. Follow that horizon line all the time. This is going to add movement. It's going to have a bit of action to the water. Does this make sense again? If you've got a photograph in front of you, use the back of it as a test if you're not happy how the brush is going on, okay? The way not to do these is like this, like that. It's quick movements, okay? Fluid movements, ripples basically is what we add into this. Horizontal, not strong, folks. Keep that grey diluted. That's what I need to say to you. Bags of water all the way through, okay? Okay, bags of water. There we go. And a little piece on this side as well would be good. Put a few little bits just randomly here as well. It's just a starting point, folks. White will come very soon. Now, your paper might still be a bit damp when you do this. Okay, so if that's the case, tap off more excess on the tissue, okay? Dry, this is working nice. So if it's spreading a little bit into your water, just almost dry the brush off with the grey and it won't spread so much. But it doesn't matter if it spreads a bit. If anything, it's a nice thing. It helps the paint flow. Keep doing these, you know. More so at the foreground. More so at the bottom. Would be a good idea. Nice horizontal brush strokes. The white's going to kick into this very soon, folks. That's going to change everything, okay? Makes a big difference. Yeah, so if you go a bit lighter with your colour, just give it a bit of a tap, yeah, on there? Yeah. And then do lots and lots of these. How's that? More of the same, yeah? Like I say, folks, sometimes it's easier to stand up to do this, you know? Don't be afraid to do that. Horizontal brush strokes. That's good, because the white's going to change it massively, yeah? You're a perfectionist, Gary. I bet all your picture frames in your house are perfectly straight, aren't they? Bang on. Okay, so as this dries, it will change, okay? It'll change completely, all right? Super. We're going to leave that to dry. We'll come back to the water once it's dry, okay? So at this stage, just forget about it. While it's drying off, we can work on these distant cliffs. These ones, this big chunk on the sort of mid-right of your picture there, we can bring those into play, all right? So this is very, very transparent. If I just show you a close-up of the picture, it's these here. Now, these go in as a flat colour, and we add shadows to them later on, okay? These little bits here. So it's the distant cliffs, and it's using grey. Your sky should be dry enough to do this, where your water's still wet, yeah? Let me show you how to do this, folks, keeping it nice and simple all the time. It's the number 6 brush again, and we're taking the grey. There's the grey. Not too thick, though. Similar to the one you've just used for doing the water, in actual fact. And the idea is to work fairly quickly. So, working along this inside edge fairly quickly. So I'm just going to go along there like so. And once you've done that, notice that's a fairly broad line. That's probably 1/4 inch wide, that line. But then what you'd do is you'd go in and you'd make it a bit wider. And where you see a pencil line coming down, go down with it. Go back along the edge to make sure the paint's all nice and fresh. So you can see there, I've put a few lines coming down as well. Then, very, very quickly, clean your brush and get yourself a very weak orange. Very weak and diluted orange. And go over the entire cliff area with that orange. Take it down to the sea. So it almost gives a sense of mist or something like that. The trick here, folks, is to retrace your steps, if that comes across right what I'm saying there. It's going back into the grey, and you can almost drag the grey down. It's leaving this solid silhouette of a cliff, but it's already starting to give me that impression. Can you see 2 pencil lines inside there? Yeah? We'll try this one. Once you've blocked it in with that pale orange, very pale orange, clean the brush and squeeze it out. Give it a good old squeeze like this. Like you did when you softened your bottoms of your clouds, and then you can drag the light down like so. Can you see that where those pencil lines are? It just takes a bit out. Clean it, squeeze it. I could do the same here as well. Anywhere where you can imagine a separation, just squeeze your brush, lay the brush flat to the paper and drag out a few little horizontals like that. There you go. Give it a go, folks. Not too strong with the grey. Don't make that mistake. More water is your safe bet, okay? This is the distance, okay? So, pale to medium grey, and then an extremely pale orange, which you've still got from your sky. Again, folks, these are all natural watercolours. These are all paints that I've designed. Vibrant, crisp, artist quality watercolours. People often say to me, which ones are the best to get? Because there's 12 of them. We actually have just released in the latest SAA catalogue something called a foliage set, which contains the 2 greens, the orange and the brown. And that is a really nice little set, okay? Because everybody struggles to mix greens. These are pre-made greens from yellows and blues. That's it, yeah. So once your first bit of grey's gone on, go back over it again very quickly so it's all fresh, you know? And because the problem is if it dries, it won't blend, you see. So if you go back over the edge of the grey again, then get a really, really diluted, almost 90% water orange. Let's get your orange nice and diluted. Should we put that there? You're right-handed, are you?
I am, yes.
Yeah, put that there for you then. That's your orange there that you want to use. So it all blends in. Retrace your steps, folks. Give it a bit of a scrub. If you can still see a bit of a grey line, then the thing to do is to just put a bit more grey in, and that will help it to disappear. Okay, so now we'll get a bit more grey on there. Just going to give it a tap on there first, and then you can just say, well, I'm just going to put a bit more in. Can you see it like almost hides it?
Right, I can't get rid of that line though, can I?
Well,
It's dried. Can I?
you can by adding a bit more grey into it, yeah, it'll just sort of disappear down into the, you can almost kind of cover it up.
Oh, right.
See what I mean? So if you use a bit more grey,
Okay, thank you.
if you actually look at the thing, you'll see it's got quite a lot of grey in it anyway. So don't panic if there's a few grey lines here and there. You can get a bit more grey and then just add a bit more colour, which will help it to blend in, yeah? So if what you're looking at on your picture now is a grey outline followed by an orange block, pick up some more grey and paint the grey coming down from the top edge of the cliff. It'll grow on you. Nice, good. So natural orange is a perfect colour for autumnal foliage. That's what it was designed for. And if you have a look at this picture here, this is a Clumber Park in Nottinghamshire. This is all natural orange here, look, for this nice autumnal scene, yeah? So that's a good example of it being used for its job. And the reason they're called natural colours is because natural as in designed to replicate a natural thing. So orange for the autumn trees, turquoise for the sea, blue for the sky, grey for shadows. Grey is the important one, folks. Everyone should have a tube of grey. Shouldn't really be using Payne's grey for shadows. A little bit too dark, really. It's like putting black on your picture. If anybody's newish to watercolours, starting out, there's a wonderful book, which you can buy today, by an artist called Matthew Palmer, which is quite a coincidence, called Watercolour for the Absolute Beginner. Now, it is a really popular book, folks. We've sold thousands of them over the years for Search Press there. The first half of the book is very much the beginner bit. The second half's got 12 step-by-step watercolour projects in. Every little brushstroke is detailed, folks. It's a good book. And of course, if anyone does get one today, I don't mind signing them for you. Just bring them up, okay? Right, okay, so that's the cliffs. Keeping it simple there. We'll let that dry off for a few seconds, and then we're going to put some shadows into this thing, okay? Yeah. So squeeze it and then lift out, yeah. We're going to put a bit of separation into this shortly, okay? Nice. Okay, great. So it's nice to bring in a bit of separation. I'll do this here and then let yours dry for a few minutes if you could, so just give it a few seconds. Basically using the same grey as you've just used. So if you take a look at this, folks, this is the same brush, the same grey. I want to take the same colour and using that same piece of kitchen paper, someone can take this home as a souvenir at the end of the day. You can, I'll sign it and you can stick it on washing line and use it again. I'm just going to, you've got to save the planet. Tap the excess off. Same grey as I've just used, but I'm taking the excess off. The two pencil lines you've got, can you see those in your hills? To the left of those, to the left of them, what I want to do is I want to go in and I want to add a grey line that comes down across the edge of the paper. Try and think of that as an L shape. Can you see what I mean by that? Yeah? Clean brush, wipe the brush almost dry. Go in and scribble in a diagonal brush stroke, soften that colour so it disappears. Can you see how it's created a bit of a separation between this and that? Do one at a time, folks, and do a few of these as well. So there's one here as well, look. It comes down there and across the water. So you can see it's an L shape. Clean brush. A couple of runs over tissue. Go in and drag it. Now if yours is really, really wet, folks, just give it a few seconds to dry. Do one at a time though. I'm also going to put one here as well. Can you see this big sort of step down in height there? Well, that wants one on as well, so I'll bring that down there like so. Clean brush, a couple of taps on tissue, and soften back. Does that make sense? So it's creating a bit of separation in those cliffs for you. Some of you have got that without realising, but you can emphasise it. Grey, same colour, soften it across to the left of your picture. Do one at a time. Clean your brush, tap on tissue, soften to the left, okay? This gives a bit of character to these hills as well, all right? Gives a bit of character to them. Classic watercolour, using transparent colours to lay over the top of another colour. So natural grey is a recession colour. Gordon Brown used to use it a lot. And it, it creates depth. Other politicians are also available. And it creates depth, okay? So it allows you to clean it and soften it. And you can see through it because it's grey. It's a shadow colour. It's not Payne's grey. That's a little bit too dark, really. One at a time, folks. Clean your brush. Just sort of 2 taps on tissue is good. And then soften it to the left of your picture. Creates that nice effect of separation there. It's good. Nice. You can relax now because the hard bit's done. That's the sky and the water. That's always the bit you've got to work pretty quickly on because you're working against it drying, of course. Now it's worth saying this one, on the right-hand corner of your picture here, where these cliffs go off, it's a bit flat, that. Okay, so just as a finishing touch to this particular technique, just paint a triangular shape in the corner and across the water edge. Can you see that? So basically like a little bit of an L shape there again. Clean brush, a couple of runs over tissue, and then just soften that so it becomes part of the cliffs. There you go. And it's just adding that little bit extra. And anywhere that you feel you could do separation, you go for it. And the places that you tend to do this would be where there is a step down in height. So here, look, for example. That's not a bad place to put a little bit of a line, even if it's just a small one like that. Half the way. Clean brush, tissue, soften it. Make sure you do clean your brush well. This applies to any time you do hills or mountains. If we take a look at this one, and this is a scene that was painted on a Lake District painting holiday, plug, that was teaching a couple of years ago. Same thing. Can you see this separation here? This is done exactly the same as what you've just done, just using pale grey for the shadows. Creates depth. The actual mixture for natural grey, I used to say it's a secret formula, but it tells you what pigment's running on the back of the tube. Like Coca-Cola tells you what on the back of the on the back of the can. It's red, yellow, and blue. So it's blue, bit of red, and a yellow. Primary colours. It's what you call a neutral tint or a key colour, as I've always called it. if you get a colour wheel, in the centre of it is a neutral colour, which is all three primaries mixed together, and that's what that is. The big problem is people struggle to mix the right grey. They get browns, they get purples. This is it's the proper job, as it were, you know. It's grey, which shadows are grey, and that's what's important, yeah. It's a staple colour. Nice, it's good. Now you can always add more to this later on as you go through the picture, but that's giving us a bit of distance and a first bit of detail. How are we doing? Should we get a bit more detail down there, shall we? Fab. It's good. It's good. Sorry?
I think mine were more like sand.
Sand dunes. There's some nice beaches around there a bit. Put a bit more shape into it. You could always put a tourist on the top of it, taking a photograph. The easel's mysteriously moving. Is it a bit drunk? Like me? Great. Okay, good stuff, folks. We're going to now work our way down the picture, and we're going to paint in this little kind of a cliff that creeps in. If we take a look at this, you can see there's a little bit of cliff, if I could say it, it's a tongue twister, a little bit of cliff creeps in on the corner of the picture. It's got some kind of a building. Extra credits, folks, if you paint that and it doesn't look like a phallic symbol, okay? Extra points. So an extra 30 seconds on your lunch if you do that. This is slightly different in the way that we do this. Of course, it's a stronger colour. It's a mix of colours too. But it's also going to be using a plastic card for scraping some colour off. Have you come across the rock scraping method before? Anybody? Some of you? Okay. What I want to do, because for some of you it's relatively new, I want to show you a bit of a demo first on how to do this. I use this a lot in pictures, and I will try and grab a few examples of more detailed use. Yeah, I've got a few floating around. I'll grab some. So basically what you can do, when you do cliffs and things, it gives a bit of separation. We can use a bit of tape for this. I'll talk you through the process. Now, if you're using masking tape, it's quite warm in this room, so wipe some sweat off your brow, take the stickiness away and pop that on your paper, like so. Then I can mix a bit of a brownie colour. The first mix, really, which is going to be a mix of greys, natural grey with a tiny bit of orange. It'll give like a greeny brown colour, which is okay for this one. And basically what you do is you get a fairly strong colour. I'll talk you through all this. And you paint in what you think to be a bit of a rocky area. It could be the side of a stream or something, or a footpath, whatever it is. Dry stone wall. It works for everything, really. Now, that's 90% grey with a little tiny bit of orange. It's got a bit of a greeny brown tinge to it. You could have put a bit more orange in it every now and again. That makes it more brown. Can you see the orange going in there? This is like using oil paint, folks. This is thick. Don't be afraid to use strong colour. And then what you do is you take your plastic card and you use the small side of it, the short side of this thing. And I tend to get my thumb, I'm right-handed obviously, and I get my thumb and I kind of bend the card with the thumb pushed into the corner. Can you see where that is? And you scrape the colour back. You can come down or up, whichever way is natural. But I'll go up with this, and you can see that I can bend it with my thumb there, and it will take off the colour. Can you see that nice texture it's given? That's the paint that has come off this. So it's sometimes nice to see this beforehand like this and do a bit of a demo of it. And it makes it look like rocks or cliffs. It's putting a bit of light on. Does that make sense what I'm doing there? Wiping away a bit of colour. It's really effective. And of course, taking the tape off will give you a fairly clean line as well. Like so. So imagine that is pretty much what we've got here. Does that make sense, what we've just done? So it's nice to see how it's done, folks. Don't panic if it doesn't work out. If it's not coming off, don't think I'll do it a bit harder, because that will rip your paper. What you do is you dampen the paint again. It needs the paint to be wet for it to work. And there's a few examples of this used in different situations. This is that same painting what I mentioned earlier, and you can see it's been used there for doing this. Yeah? Plastic card, I went up with that to make it look as though it was like a rocky, grassy covered area. Some paintings on the far wall there, the seascape area, if you like, and you'll see those obviously when you go for lunch. You can see that there's a few pictures there, and there you go. You can also see that at home now as well. So that is basically used on all those pictures. If you can see a picture with palm trees on, it's been used to get the rocks on the beach and so on. So it's a nice effect, but if it's something that you've never done before and you want to have a little practice, ask to borrow your neighbour's picture or use the back of that. Okay, it's thick paint. It's thick paint with a relatively quick process because it needs to be wet to get it off, but not too wet. We start off with a bit of masking tape, folks. Now, before you stick this anywhere, stick it to yourself, stick it to your hand. It's only a small area, it's only a little bit in the corner. Stick it to your hand like so, take it off, wipe some moisture from your brow, stick it over the masking tape, and place this on the bottom of that area, like so, including the little piece at the end there as well. Just stick it. If you're not sure where to stick it, ask your neighbour, they'll tell you. Just make sure you take your stickiness away. Make sure you take your stickiness away, okay?
Can I use your brow because mine's got makeup on?
It's got makeup on. That's a new technique for you. That might create a reflection. Anybody want any brown tape? Stick it to your chin because the SAA or Matthew Palmer is not responsible for ripped pictures, all right? Make sure you press it down fairly well, folks, and let me do it on here for you now, just so you can see for yourself, okay? We'll put the little building on afterwards. So let me show you this on here, that way I can help you. So the first colour is a bit of a mix. What we do is we take a big number 6 brush, we take a fairly big chunk of grey, it's thick paint, with a little tiny bit of the orange. Here is a bit of a greeny colour, but it's still pretty much grey, yeah? And what I do basically is I paint in this little tiny piece here. There's a few little small rocks. Then we move into this area here where the building is, and it goes up, and you fill it in. You fill it in, okay? It's only a small area. Now, to make it look more of a browny colour, once you've put that in, don't clean your brush or anything, folks, but take a very thick blob of the orange, almost direct from the spot on the palette there. So you can see that that is very thick paint there. And just add orange straight in. Don't be afraid about putting the orange there, folks, because on the left-hand side of the picture, you've got these nice terracotta roofs to come later, which makes a difference. Work it all in. Make sure it all blends in. Make sure it's all nice and fresh. Give it some character. If you've got a bit of a nervous shake, that helps for doing this sort of thing as well. Excuse me. And then we take the plastic card and use the corner, and you go up and you scrape away a bit of colour. Okay. Now I know you can't see it too close on the screen there, but I'm scraping away the paint and just ever so gently, like when you put some polyfiller on a wall to fill the cracks. Similar kind of idea, I suppose. There we go. Does that make sense there? And you can put as much or as little time as you want into that. Just ever so gently wiping off that thick paint, folks. So start off by doing grey with a tiny bit of orange. We'll paint the building afterwards, I think. Yeah, we'll pop that on afterwards. We'll just do the rocky bit first. Make sure you get plenty of dark on. And then a bit of orange. And then just go for it. Whenever you do something like this, and whenever you're using masking tape, folks, there's a chance of seepage down the back of the tape. It's fine because there's a reflection to come of this, so it doesn't really matter. And what I want to do, folks, I know you can't really see that too well, and Gary might shout at me, but I'm just going to move the picture around the room for a second. Is that a bad thing to do? We can do that, can't we? There you go. So you can see how the paint's come off, yeah? All right. It's nice just to see what we're talking about. There we go. So nice and strong with your colour, folks. Don't be afraid. Working pretty quickly because you're working against the drying time. Okay, and it creates a nice textured area. Making use of the nice textured. There you go. You can see there, can't you? This little effect here. All right. It's only a little area, folks. Don't worry about it. If it's not coming off because it's too dry, just dampen it with a damp brush, which means you're taking the excess off. There you go, just to give you a bit of a heads up there on what we're doing. All right. Some people have been scraping the boulders for years to know what they're doing here. That's good. There you go. Nice, well done. Have you done it before?
Yeah, we used the
Palette knife, that's the classic one, yeah. These work nice because it's got that flexibility to it, you know. Yours is a bit wet, just give it a few seconds just to soak in there. How are we doing over here? There we go. Nice, super. Excellent. And this will get reflected a bit later, you know. It'll give it a bit of shape and a bit of form. There we go. I think everyone's having some fun with this, aren't they? Boulder scraping.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Yep.
I think your colour's a bit thin. So let's get a bit more colour on there. The thicker the paint, the better it comes off. Because there's more colour to move. There you go. So if you just give it another go and then you've cracked it. I'll come have a look for you. That's not bad. You're doing all right there. So you basically just put it back like that.
Oh, I've been doing it a bit more angled. That's where I've gone wrong.
I think you're doing a good job there, actually. It's like a little sketch show, this, isn't it? Every time I walk away, you come straight in the picture. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's more so it's like that piece or that piece. But that's worked nice. Good, yeah. Let me get you an example up on the screen, folks, that you can see that's really had a good scrape at it. There's a couple of seascapes here. One of them is the something apostles in Australia. 12, is it? 7? I don't know. You tell me. You know, on the Great Ocean Road near Melbourne, and there's these big piles of rocks called the 12 Apostles, is it? I don't know, yeah? This is a scene of that. And this entire thing has been done with plastic card. So you can see how you can really get some intricate detail in there. You can reinforce it by putting grey at the back of them as well. More recently, I painted this picture only a few days ago, this kind of Mediterranean seascape. And this was done with it as well, where the rocky area comes down onto the beach. Yeah, I'll put these pictures over the side. Feel free to take photographs if you want to have a go yourself. But it's a nice effect. It really works well for watercolours because the textured paper more than anything else, to be honest. There we go. Can't go wrong. Right. So you can paint in your little building if you like. If you want to give it a go. Just using the same dark colour, the grey with a bit of orange. And the building, fairly straightforward. It's just like a little bit of some sort of a... I think my easel is actually shrinking at the back. That's why it keeps moving, Gary. And to tighten this thing here. Probably all going to come crashing down now, you watch. Yeah? Okay, so basically... just painting in this little bit of a building here, nothing fancy about it, just kind of sits on the top there. You can use the grey for that with a tiny bit of the orange. There you go, and it just kind of slots its There's lots in place there. And then very carefully take the tape off. Now do it slowly, folks. If it starts to rip, go the opposite way with it, but it should come off fairly cleanly. If it does happen to leave any bits of seepage down the back, then that will be part of the reflection. Okay. It's shrinking at the back, the leg's shrinking. Okay. It's a bit about when it's in your frame, you won't see that. But if it does rip, it's not a bad thing because you get a bit of white, you know, a bit of froth or something. Just that there's a little bit drunk on the back. Good stuff. Okay, so basically, folks, using that same colour, let's get a bit of reflection on this thing then. You don't really get reflection in the sea, to be honest, but a little bit is not a bad thing. So the colour we use for doing this, the grey with a bit of orange, very dry brush, take the excess off, and just directly underneath it, just add in a few hit and miss horizontal ripples, very dry, on the tissue there, just to give it a little bit of horizontal. There you go. So it's just kind of hitting and missing the picture. Makes it look as though it's meant to be there. Very dry though with your brush for that. So if you take the excess off on the tissue, keep the lines horizontal again. You don't really get much in the way of reflection on the sea, but a little bit is not a bad idea. Just helps it to all kind of sit down. The times that you do see a bit of reflection is when you've got tall towers like there. Now, for this, I can use the same colour, but very dry, and pinch your brush like that. See the pinch? Give it a bit of a pinch like so. Pinch it. Now I want to turn this on the side to make sure this is nice and straight, okay? And basically, using this pinch brush again, practice on that scrap piece of paper, folks. Just put a few downward flicks. Can we see those? See these little drags? I'll turn it back the right way so you can see. Very dry downward flicks. It's not a bad idea to rotate your board when you do that, okay? Again, just if you've not done this before, folks, just use a bit of the back of that copy to get that effect. It just gives a bit of depth to the water, okay? Keep them vertical, straight down, just below. That's it, works well. It just catches the building there, don't it, Fear? Nice. Might as well pull up a chair and sit there, to be honest.
I've got stuff to do that in.
Oh, have you? So a nice bit of reflection, folks, doesn't go amiss on that picture, yeah? Nice downward flicks. In the background, right in the background, just below these cliffs here, we're going to take a little bit of that same colour, the greeny, browny grey, with a little bit of a dry brush. And at the bottom of the cliffs, the grey ones, for the last sort of couple of inches, so from about here somewhere, we're going to darken the edge and go up, making it higher as it goes up. Can you see that there? So it starts off probably about halfway, about there, and basically do a little upward flicks pointing to around sort of 1 o'clock or something. Clean the brush, wipe it on the tissue so it's dry, and then just flick those away so it becomes part of the background cliffs. Now the reason for this is because it starts to connect almost in a bit of a cove kind of fashion. It starts to bring it round a bit, helps it become part of this foreground, but only from about here, a little bit of a halfway. And then you could even put a few little reflections of that same colour, like you've just done there, just underneath, but only that area. So a few little horizontals just below there as well. Just kind of ties that piece together. It's just balance, basically. It's balancing the picture a little bit. Bringing the two bits together. And then a few little bits of horizontal just underneath that. Nice. Now, if you're being realistic about this, what I would expect to see is this piece here with the lighthouse, whatever building it may be, is the cliffs to drop slightly lower as they come towards the edge of the picture. So what we can do is, on the last inch of it, we can just add a little bit extra below it there and connect it up into the cliffs above. Hopefully that makes sense, folks. It's like a step, so it's a little bit lower here. Just using that same colour. And if you want to make it look as though that's got a bit of texture on it, you could always use the card just to put a couple of flicks on it like that. Can you see? I've just put a couple of little flicks on it, just on the edge there. Makes quite a difference. So it's just brought it a little bit lower. Let me just have a wand to make sure you're okay with that one. Right on the edge. Make sure the colour's just as dark as what's above so it all fits in. And then with a damp brush you can work it into the cliffs and then put a few little flicks on it. It just stops it looking so flat, really. That's the key for that. Now, while you're doing that, folks, I'm going to wander around and give you some natural white, okay? We're going to start to put some white on this picture, a few waves, that kind of thing. So I'm just going to give you a squirt of that in your palette. So this is a white watercolour. It's a titanium-based one, so it's a very opaque colour. Unlike gouache or gouache, it won't go off, it won't dry hard in your palette, or your tube, should I say. So you can reuse this, just activate it with a bit of water. It's a slightly warmer white as well, so it will fit in nice with the cotton papers.
Thank you.
So, this makes a difference, this, and this is quite addictive to do. This gives that nice wave effect, and it always is quite a nice thing to do. Again, something that you might want to practice before you do it on your own pictures. But basically, it's using the plastic card again. It's using the short edge, and there's two different kinds of waves, really. If we have a look at this copy of the picture here, what we can do is we can have these very skinny ones at the back, which is holding the card at right angle and tapping the edge to give these little thin waves. But the larger ones, you angle your card slightly down and just ever so lightly just pull it down a bit, and it gives more of a rolling wave effect. Makes quite a difference to the picture, really, this. So what you do is you use the number 6 brush, and the white paint itself doesn't work too well if it's just straight from the tube. So a little tiny bit of water, not too much water. Has anybody ever painted with white paint and then it's gone on and then it disappears when it's dry? That's quite a common thing, and that's too much water basically on in your colour. So I've put a little bit of water in there, tiny bit of water, and I've got a number 6 brush, and I want to make sure it's got a bit of movement to that colour, which it has. And basically I'm going to take a blob of paint and stick it on the edge of the card, like so. Now if this worries you, practice on that scrap piece of paper first. But there's two ways to do it, folks, okay? So you can see the white on there, hopefully. You can go in at right angle. So you basically, in the background, do these nice... Can you see those little sort of wavy effects? Don't panic about it, folks. If it's not something you've done before, then like I say, a bit of a practice is not a bad thing. Don't dilute your colour too much, though, but keep them horizontal. It's quite addictive. You need to keep refreshing it every so often. It works nice just underneath the cliffs in the background, little horizontal lines, every so often. Tapping your paper, keeping them horizontal, and hopefully you can see that. So that's above the dark cliffs. We'd focus on that. Put the white on. Go in with horizontals. Now, if it's not working for you, you probably need to put a bit more paint on your card. For the larger waves, as you get lower down, what you'll notice as you do this, you'll notice that the white will gather over the edge of your card. So below the cliffs, you can do more of an actual drag down like that. Get a bit more movement in them, but still keeping them horizontal. See how we're doing. If you want any more white, folks, just let me know, okay? Okay, so a bit more paint on. Don't be afraid to put quite a lot of paint on your card, yeah? If you're getting more of a dotty effect, then you can go in with a bit more colour. This is something that you can really go to town with. It's the sea after all, you know, and you've got plenty of waves on this, so don't be afraid to do that. Keep it going, keep it building up. It's not a problem. If you want any more white, let me know. And again, I can just add a few more foreground ones here. Do some directly underneath the cliffs as well. So, more of an angle. So if you look at this card on the screen, you can see where the paint's gathering over the edge. You hold the card on a slight angle, and you can just basically, ever so slightly, pull it down a bit. And it just makes it look more as though it's a rolling wave, I suppose you could say. Like so. So you get that nice bit of a frothy kind of effect. We should have some sound effects, Gary. Ocean waves crashing. That might make people want the loo, so probably not a good idea. So if you've got a dark sea, this will really shine out nice. Of course, there's no reason why you can't use a a paintbrush as well. The paintbrush, if you want to just taper them off a little bit at the end, you want to pick up the brush, the number 6 brush. It's probably already got some white on, just to taper them away a little bit. So you can really spend quite a bit of time on this if you want to, doing these nice horizontal waves. Try and put some of those right angle ones, these ones, folks, where you went in right angle, just at the bottom of the cliffs. Just breaks it a little bit. Just helps it. Fabulous. You've also got this on your desk as well, folks, a craft knife, yeah? And a craft knife will give you a similar effect, and it will also help to give a bit of light in your water. But if you wanted to get a bit more character to this, you could go in quite happily and put a few extra horizontals. Don't be afraid to scrape your water, okay? Use the point of your knife. And you're actually cutting the paper. Now, I've been doing this for a long time, folks. I've never gone through to the other side yet. So, you physically cut your paper. Don't be afraid. It's also nice to give an impression of a bit of a splash on the bottom of these rocks. You can almost dig and flick. You can dig and flick, and it will give that nice impression of a bit of movement. What I want to do, folks, is wander around and show you this. Where the white paint is, if yours finishes very sudden, use the craft knife to taper it off. But let me show you what's happening, folks, on this picture. Craft knife just gives that little bit of an extra finish. You can see how I've scraped off here. This is all craft knife, all this. You don't have to worry about it. And you do cut your paper, so don't be afraid to do it, okay? But it gives a very much a random effect. There you go. So if using the knife, you can see that all these are scrapes all the way along the edge of the cliffs. And it's just adding a bit more movement and a bit of light to the water. But seriously, folks, don't worry about cutting your paper. It's fine. Don't tickle your paper. Give it some welly. You can see these little...
Oh, right, okay. Yours, look, yeah. I was
Yeah.
worried because you got like blobs, but seeing yours and scraping it
When you scrape it, it kind of
yeah.
sort of helps, don't it? You've got to physically go in and actually cut your paper like that, look. Don't tickle your paper, folks. Give it a good cut. You can see it's lovely along the base of the cliffs there, and it just extends your waves, and it gives a hit and miss texture. So it blends the waves in. It's looking nice, that. It's good. There you go. You can see this one. Nice. Changes it when you put the wire, so it makes it more coastal. So basically, it's just scraping, extending the waves at the edge. Don't be afraid to cut them. It's not a problem to do that. And just enjoy it, really, at the end of the day. We're doing over here, let's have a look. Just be quite aggressive with your paper. Extend the waves, put some at the base of the cliffs as well. And it just helps it to give it more of a coastal feel, more of an ocean splash. That's good. Like this. That's lovely, that. So basically, give it a good old scratch. Give it some texture. There we go. Nice, yeah. So at the ends of these white bits, you can use the knife to do this. And it just sort of tapers away the ends a little bit, yeah? Alright, it's looking nice. Gives it more of an ocean feel, don't it, really, when you do that. And you can brush away any excess off the paper there. Now obviously when you clean your brush, folks, you'll notice that your water goes very chalky, but that's fine. You can still use it, but at lunchtime you can change your water. We've got about another sort of 17 minutes or so of painting, then we're going to have a break, okay? And then after lunch, we'll start back at 2 o'clock, 2 till 4. We'll be doing the focusing all the energy on the buildings on this left-hand side and the trees, the foliage, that kind of thing, yeah? But we can do a little bit more painting before then. And we're going to start to do the distant buildings at the back of the tall tower. This is nice. Looks good, that. Super. I think you'd be quite happy left for the next 15 minutes scratching, having a good scratch. Can't beat a good scratch. Especially as you get to lunchtime. Okay, now on your desks, folks, you've also got a lift-out brush. Now, these are quite unique things. These are brushes what I designed a few years ago for taking away paint, basically. And the one you've got here is the extra large one, okay? It's the one with the white tip on it. And now if you look at this, it'll say Matthew Palmer Lift-Out Extra Large. This will really remove paint. So if you've got any problems that you need to wash out, you could do one of these for life, really. Wash it away. And then using a bit of tissue, you can dab the paint off. It's a super fine edge, folks. These are cracking brushes, these. I've lost without these brushes. And there's a pack of 2, which has got the small one and the large one. Or a pack of 3 that's got small, large, and extra large. Okay, and really effective brushes. What you do is you clean your brush in your water, give it a very gentle squeeze, but don't take all the water, but most of the water, so it's just damp. And in that building, the little tower here, the right-hand side of it, we can just lift off a little bit of light from it. Now you probably can't see that on the screen. But you give it a tap, and it's put like a little bit of light down one edge of it, okay? Now, the same thing would apply to anywhere that you wanted to get a bit of light coming through. You could add some light in these background cliffs if you wanted to, just by scrubbing it and taking the excess off with tissue. It does actually work really well, and it's a nice little addition to anybody's watercolour palette, having a lift-out brush. Now it'll take off colour on the flat edge, the sharp, crisp edge in the water, gentle squeeze, and a soften. And you can just take off a bit of colour fairly easily on the right-hand side of that distant building as well. You can even do it in your water. If you wanted to get a few more horizontal lines in your water, a few lighter ones, then you could take out some colour from those. But as it stands, that's something that we don't necessarily need to do, really. So, unless you feel the need to, okay? So a bit of light in your cliffs is not a bad thing, all right? It's also a nice brush for painting as well. And we're going to use this to paint in the distant buildings to the left of the tower before we get that fluid off, okay? So, the plan of action is to take a very pale grey, so this is my grey here, with that lift-out brush, nice and pale, folks, there it is, nice and light, look, and very simply paint in this distant area all in the one colour to start with. So a nice pale grey you can see in this corner here. Bring it down towards the trees. Just as it gets towards the trees, just above, clean your brush, give it a bit of a tap on tissue, and then just use water to fade it away. So that's just the starting point of that area, okay? Not too thick. Make use of that sharp edge. Make sure you can see this. If yours is again a bit lost in your picture, make your colour a bit stronger, but it should slightly stand above the sea at the back. Now we will add some detail to this but very shortly as well, but it's just blocking in at this stage, okay? There you go.
Didn't see that one.
It's all right. So it kind of comes to just above where the pencil is for the trees. Clean your brush on tissue and just lightly soften it down so it kind of fades lighter at the back of the foliage there at the bottom. Remember, this is just the basic colour that we add in at this stage, okay? As you look back on your picture at this stage, you should be starting to see, by the way, little hints of orange just coming through in the sea, just tiny bits, and that's important, and that was what we did at the beginning, because that's making the sky and the sea kind of reflect a little bit, just hints of it, you know, tiny bits. It's like a glaze. You could use this brush to put some light in, you know. You could use the lift out brush just to put little bits of
There was some orange under there.
you can always add more later if you wanted more. But you could do some of that quite easily and then get the tissue and just do that. See what I mean? And you could quite easily lighten it up. As long as you keep the lines horizontal, you can do as many as you want, really. Does that make sense? Yeah? Yeah? Well, that's what you're here to get over your conquer your fears. That's it, yeah. It's like bungee jumping. You know, you put the two birds on your shoulder and jump off the cliff. It's like that. You've just got to do it, and then you're fine. Okay, so that's just a block of colour, nothing fancy. But once it's had a few seconds to dry, folks, what you can do now is take some orange. I'll show you this then while yours is drying. Not too strong, a medium strength natural orange. Same brush. I always do that with my brush, wipe the excess on the side. And there's a couple of roofs you can paint in. There's one just there, look. Put the roof in, the terracotta goes in very simply, use the flat edge of it. And there's also a little bit of a roof as well, just here. You can probably see that, can you? So hopefully you can see that there. Now as you put this on, if your orange is not standing out, folks, make it a bit stronger. Make it a bit heavier. And if you're feeling really brave, you could even, if you look at your little copies of the picture, you could paint in another roof, coming down, like so. There you go. So we've got these three roofs here, over the top of the grey. Now if your grey is still a bit wet, just give it a few seconds, waft it with your SAA membership card. That'll dry it. Make sure that you can see this as orange, you know, it wants to be orange, this. So you might need to make it a little bit stronger with your colour. But also think to yourself that it's an old Italian village, so nothing's perfect, is it?
No.
It's all run by mafia, you see. It's got a bit of character to it. Yes. The third one is the one you've got to think about yourself. It's basically just at the side here. Can we see that one? Just at the side there. Natural orange, perfect terracotta colour, folks. It's just where the trees are at the bottom, if you look. Just got to make it up, that one. Close your eyes and pick a spot. A bit stronger with that colour. Nice. So what you do there is you just sort of do it more like, and then fill it in, and that's your roof. Yeah. So this lift out brush, folks, this quickly becomes your best friend in painting because it's got such a clean edge on it. You can remove colours with it, but you can add paint with it, and it's great for roofs and things. It's also great at cleaning the shower. You know, if you've got that black stuff in the tiles, a bit of tissue, correct it. Can't go wrong. Now when that dries off, we'll put some shadows and a bit of texture over it. So this one there, do you mind me doing this?
Yeah.
Is kind of here like that, look. So that's all roof in actual fact
Oh, is
there.
it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it kind of goes behind, you know what I mean? It kind of tucks away at the back of the other one. There you go. It sort of goes behind here.
Okay.
Yours is a bit broader, but that doesn't matter. It's fine. As long as the angle's right. I mean, it just shows, folks, how simple it is to paint in a building using a brush. Just let me give you a quick demo, look. If I use the terracotta colour, natural orange, here, and if you're doing a very simple building, what you'd do is you would just do the little roof. XL lift out brush. Something like that there. Now you can put that side in as well for the apex. And then very, very simply all you'd do is you'd use that same brush and you could say, well, let's put the darkness down here. This could be like an old barn or something in a field or something. And then you could just bring in that here like so. Bring it down. Using a bit of water on the brush, you can soften that over. So you get the light side as well. And that's the world's simplest little barn, just using one brush. But it's got that watercolour character to it. And of course, because that is looking like a bit of a rustic building, you could add a bit of grey. Use the flat edge of the brush to put the sort of corrugated iron roof on it. Nice in your landscape, something like that. There you go. So it gives a bit of character. And of course you can put your windows and the barn entrance, etc. Yeah? So it's not as complicated as you think. That can be homework at lunchtime, painting that little barn in. Okay, so what I want to do now, folks, is put that brush away, and I'm actually going to use the 6 brush again, the size 6 one. We've got like 5 minutes left of this this first sitting. So in those 5 minutes, it'll be nice just to have a look at doing a few shadows in that building area on this left-hand side. And then we can take the masking fluid off as well, ready for doing the buildings after lunch, which will be nice. So very simply, folks, just using some grey, natural grey, number 6 brush, the same grey that you just used for doing the background colour. Slightly heavier though, slightly stronger with the grey. Can you see that colour there? It's probably a medium consistency. So a little bit of water, but a fairly strongish grey. Number 6 brush. And it's worth just taking the excess off of the brush as well. Because what we need to do is think about adding a few light and dark bits. So if you've got here this roof on this edge, the left-hand side, if you look at your worksheet, is slightly darker. So that needs to come down. Can you see I've gone under the roof there? Well, it's quite hard to see that on the screen. It comes down there. But then it also goes underneath the roof there as well. Now, because the roof is still probably damp a little bit, just avoid touching it and leave a thin line there. Can you see where that grey's gone? Down the edge. Can you see that? Clean your brush, wipe it on tissue so it's almost dry, and then basically just soften that down. Drag it away, forward and back brush strokes, moving your brush down until it becomes part of the building, and it gives us the first shadow. I'll come and have a look, make sure you're okay. Slightly stronger with the grey, remember, slightly heavier with the grey, natural grey. You might notice the grey starting to look a bit blue in your palette. It'll mix back together, but remember what I said, it's a mixture of blue, red and yellow, the blue being the dominant pigment. So you do see a little bit of separation in there. How are we doing? So down there, look. Down there. And clean your brush really well, really well. Wipe it dry and then just make it disappear down into your picture. It's a bit strong, yours, isn't it? Let's just get a bit of water on there and just give it a soften.
I've got this blue bit here as well, where I got a bit carried away with the sky.
This?
This bit in this.
Oh, that's okay. That's a bit of pigeon poo, that, on your roof. That's okay. Nice, good. So that's the first real shadow, you know, on the picture. And after lunch, we're going to focus on that for a couple of hours on all the shadows and things. It's fine. And to give a bit of extra life to this, use that same grey, and under the roof here, put a thin line of grey. Can you see I've put a thin line of grey just under there? And also under that roof as well. Now it does help if you can leave a thin gap between the roof and the actual shadow, but it's a line of grey that goes just underneath the roof. And then what you do, folks, is you slightly soften that a bit. So you clean the brush. I mean, look at that tissue I'm using now, look at that. It's like a scene from Alien. Clean the brush, just wipe it on tissue, and just ever so gently, with an almost dry brush, just soften so it almost melts into the picture there. You can be a fraction darker with your grey if you're not seeing this. This is the underneath shadow. This is the eaves where it goes under, okay? It's quite important. That's okay. It's good. Works, yeah. So, sorry? Okay, that's fine. So that's pretty much where we're at, folks. Before lunch, we'll pick this thing back up at 2 o'clock, okay? We'll leave the fluid on because we're not quite at a stage where we're ready to take the fluid off just yet. So for the people working along at home, watching at home, just keep your picture somewhere relatively cool. Don't put it next to the radiator or the fire. The masking fluid needs to be kept fairly cool. You could pop it in the fridge. Not really, I'm joking. And then we'll come back to this at 2 o'clock and we'll put all the effort and focus into painting these wonderful buildings, and this is what really changes the whole picture. So thanks for watching at home, folks, and we'll see you at 2 o'clock. Woo.
Let us bring out the artist in you. If you'd like to learn how to paint or improve your painting, the SAA is here to inform, encourage, and inspire you every step of the way. When you become an SAA member, you get so many benefits, including the free bi-monthly newsletter Paint, packed with inspiring step-by-step projects, fascinating articles, and detailed information to get your creative juices flowing. Discounts on over 13,000 art products featured on the SAA website and in the Home Shop catalogue, with free order line and free delivery in the UK mainland. A devoted SAA team on hand to answer your questions and give you the confidence and motivation you need to start painting and develop at a pace that suits you. Plus, a free welcome pack filled with gifts and practical help to get you started, as well as the opportunity to make friends with like-minded people.
Best thing about being a member is the inspiration from the magazines, to be able to purchase things at a very reasonable price.
Yeah, you get the reduction on all the materials, the advice you get.
I can shop from home.
It's a community.
It seemed like a very friendly sort of organisation.
If somebody's thinking of joining, don't spend too long thinking. Just join. They'll love it.